use they them pronouns. I'm currently an academic advisor for Human Development and Family Studies, and I'm currently working with Dr. Jen with creating this event. So we are going to have a few panelists here that they'll introduce themselves from different graduate programs here that are offered at CSU. So this is a great opportunity for you to ask any questions you have in terms of like, I think since all of you are in undergrad, anything that has to do with prevention intervention, we can have a bunch of programs that you can ask. Or if you have in general about just like grassroots stuff, we can also be an opportunity. If you haven't already, there is a check-in sheet over there in the, I guess it's my left over there by the door. So just put your name, CC ID and email, and also if you're doing this for extra credit, just specify which class as well. And also feel free to take even more sandwiches. But this time, it won't take as much, but I'm gonna go ahead and let our panelists introduce themselves before we start off with the round of questions.
I guess I can start. I'm Joshua Eggerson, and I am in the Master's of Science in Human Development Family Studies with concentration in marriage and family therapy.
I'm Megan, she, her pronoun. I am in the Applied Developmental Science PhD program with the Prevention Science specialization.
I'm Sabrina, and she, or hers, and I am in the Counseling and Career Development Master's program with the School Counseling Specialization.
I'm Larissa. I use she, her pronouns. I am also in the Counseling and Career Development Master's program, and I have the clinical mental health specialization, and I can also talk about career counseling as well.
My name is Darian. I use she, or hers pronouns, and I'm in the Student Affairs and Higher Education program.
I just want to make sure, Dr. Rinke, can the audience hear them, or would we need a catch on?
Let me double check. As you're talking, our owl is following you, and so our video is showing up. Let me just check with our virtual attendees.
Yeah, I just want to, I think there is a mic, so if you need to, then you might just turn it on.
We got a yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Perfect.
Yeah. So if you can just remember to please project, we'll for sure pick it up.
And just, I think, well, I guess you can just introduce yourselves again as you're speaking. But I do have, I guess, since we've done with introductions, my first question is what made you decide, like what made you decide to pursue a graduate degree in your program? And what do you hope to do afterwards?
Let me start from me again, Josh. I wanted to specifically pursue this graduate program, Master's in Marriage and Family Therapy, because I really wanted to get into clinical work. And working with kiddos from like trauma backgrounds and things like that. And I want to work in more diverse settings, such as inpatient facilities, like mental health facilities, or even nonprofits. And so I want to do more of like the base like intervention in the field type of work. And I found the best way to do that was becoming a therapist. Working with kiddos, and especially with this program, I've been able to have internships at various like mentoring programs. They're just really cool. Yeah, what I would do afterwards is actually pursue a PhD in clinical psychology. This has been my applications a couple weeks ago. Hoping to hear back from about that, and so I can get to more clinical work and like design interventions and update interventions that need to like updating things like that. It's wanting to work in more settings, kind of like a
I'm Megan again. Let's see, I've had a winding road that has brought me to this program, but graduate school in general, I was doing work in youth development for a while, and I realized that a lot of the things that we were trying weren't necessarily working, or I couldn't find evidence that they were working. So that got me more interested in research, and especially like tailoring interventions and prevention programs for contexts that they weren't necessarily originally designed for. So I worked in a research position for a while to kind of figure out if I wanted to do that, or if I really wanted to make the commitment to a PhD program, which is a long-term commitment. And I did, and really ultimately, you know, similar to Josh, I want to be like developing my own program of research, developing interventions, and applying them in different contexts. And this specific program, I'm very interested in mindfulness-based intervention, particularly for adolescents, and we have some great people here who are doing that research.
And I'm Sabrina again. I used to teach sixth grade English. I did that for 3 years. And it was like through the pandemic partially, and I was like, I think I actually care more about students' emotional needs than trying to force them to learn grammar in this current moment. And that made me think, maybe I could try counseling and become a school counselor instead. I really have a passion for youth as well. And also the school as a system is very interesting to me. We're talking about, for me specifically, that K-12 environment. So I hope to eventually move more inwards in like a district way, and see what efforts can be made there as well, on a more macro scale.
All right, I'm Larissa again. I also had a pretty winding road to my graduate degree. I have a undergrad in philosophy. And so how does philosophy relate to mental health was always an interesting question for me, and it was an ethical question. And I wanted to know what was going on in the mental health field from the provider's perspective, because there's a lot that is going on. And I thought that I wanted field experience, and a graduate degree, a master's level degree in particular, was going to show me what that would be like, so that I can see where problems are, and like from the provider's perspective, not only for the clients, but for the providers, and hopefully make some change. And that's why I did it. And that's kind of a little bit about what I hope to do with it afterwards.
In undergrad, I had this moment of panic, and I was like, oh, I'm a political science major, and I'm like, I hate Poly 101. And so I started exploring what other majors I was interested in. Human development, family studies ended up being one. And then my mom asked oh, well, what can you do with that? And I was like, I don't know. And I had a campus job at the time working in the student life and leadership office. It's similar to Slice here. And I looked at my supervisor one day and I was like, I kind of want to do like you do for the rest of my life. And he's like, cool, let's talk about how you make that happen. And so not really wanting to be an educator, but being drawn to education and having this draw towards supporting college students and the college experience, and what that can mean and how to empower students to be leaders through those 4 years so that it translates across the lifetime, is kind of how I found myself in student affairs. And yeah, I guess big picture goal is to have a leadership role in student affairs. But that changes. The program is pretty intense right now, and I'm I just want out most days, but yeah, that's kind of what I hope to do with undergrad.
Are there any questions from the audience before I move on to the next question?
Not seeing any in the chat.
Cool. So my next question is, how did y'all prepare for graduate school? And what were some helpful resources to help you prepare for those as well?
Yeah. So I guess just start from the context. I'm a first generation student. I come from a culture of generational poverty, and so I didn't have anyone helping me or navigate through undergrad. And so I was like, well, I'm figuring this out. And so I got to sophomore year of my undergrad and I was like, I think I want to go to grad school, but I don't know how to do it. And I don't know if people like me are there, because the higher up in education I'd go, the less people with my experience that I would see, or just perceptions or perspectives. But I found some faculty who were also first-year students who were also yeah, I think you could do this. And I was like, wow, I feel like I can do it now. And so having those resources, those professors, really helped me say, draft my letter for applying for grad school, or even just my CV, and saying here's what I think you need to do, and treat me very gently in that process, because I was I don't know what to do. And I think that really helped me build that sense of self-efficacy in terms of okay, I think I can do it. And so In terms of those resources, I would say faculty, my professors, those people who I built those relationships with and who like knew me, my story were so impactful for me being here today. And I think a lot of it was that.
Yeah, so how did I prepare? I think I prepared through trying a lot of different like work experiences, and trying to expose myself to environments where people have jobs that I thought I might want, so that I could really see like what their day-to-day was like. So yeah, that was kind of the whole idea behind working as sort of like a research associate in a research lab before applying to grad school. And that's where I was like, okay, yeah, like I look at the principal investigator, the director of our lab, and I like want that person's job. So yes, I will go for 5 years and get a PhD to do that. So yeah, I'd say like that was really helpful preparation for me, just getting a true sense of what their day-to-day was like. And then I totally agree about the relationship. Yeah, building strong and as close of relationships as you can with people that can mentor you through the process.
In terms of like, when is a good time to start thinking about grad school? I think there is no right time. I never thought I was gonna go to grad school, ever, no way. I was very much like, I couldn't do that, one. And, you know, two, I can't afford that. And all those other doubts that start coming in your head when people say the word grad school. And I think, and I'm in agreement with that statement of like those work experience. I think it makes a really big difference. I mean, I took 3 years in between my undergrad and this, and I think that it helped me become a better, gain a better work ethic for starters. Like coming from undergrad, I did not have a great work ethic, so maybe in terms of like thinking about grad school, like it varies for so many different people, but when you start maybe feeling more capable to handle like these sorts of responsibilities, because it's not easy. And my previous experience as a teacher really shaped me to feel like I was capable of doing.
Yeah, kind of going back on, like, off of that time piece, like, I waited 5 years between my undergrad and my master's because I didn't know what I wanted to do and I wasn't ready. I want a PhD. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get a PhD if I didn't know what I wanted. And I didn't know what I was interested in, what I was passionate about. I just knew I wanted that. And that wasn't enough. And so, eventually through life experience and just kind of self-reflecting, I was like, I'm really interested in at least this field. And I know that I can get more experience and more knowledge about this field if I go now. And it was a good time because it was right to like in the middle of COVID when everyone was transitioning out. So it was very good. And so that kind of, I think that ties into this, how did I prepare? I prepared pretty much by being honest with myself about what I wanted and what I was looking for. And like, I want a PhD, but I'm not there yet. And so what do I need to do to get there? Find out more about what I am interested in. And this was the path for me. And I want to also agree with professors. The relationships you've had with your professors can go a really long way to like bridging that gap when you're applying. Because I mean, I have philosophy professors. They're not in mental health. They don't know much about it besides it's mental health. And they were still so supportive, and they still had so much knowledge to give. And they're the ones writing your letters of recommendations. Like, build those relationships, even if it's just like, hey, I'm interested in what you're researching. Like, let's talk. Just build that relationship and get them to know you, because that's how those letters of recommendations really get written.
Some of the resources that I took advantage of, I'm also a first generation college student. And at my undergrad institution, we just had like I was connected in a way that helped me know about lots of opportunities that were available to me. And I guess once I it's like, yeah, this is what I want to do. How do I get there? I started thinking more about like master's programs, PhD programs, and I found McNair's Scholars Program. It's a trio program. I know that CSU is working on getting a McNair Scholars Program, but essentially it's to help students that come from minoritized backgrounds pursue PhDs. And so, yeah, like that was kind of like the space that was the resource to help me figure out what does it look like to apply to get into graduate school, to pursue a PhD, those different steps that I'm like working through now. And then also just like those professor connections, my supervisors, honestly, like friends and family having conversations about like, can we afford this if I wanted to do this? And yeah, just really using the community around me to make a decision that I felt good about.
Can I move into a question? I think it's relevant before we just specifically focus on your graduate experience, kind of talking about that transition into graduate school. So one of the questions that came from our students, if you can just talk about your own transition from being an undergraduate student to then the identity of a graduate student and what that was like for you.
Yeah, so I know we have like different experiences for folks, but I came straight out of undergrad. I moved here from like Western Washington at Washington State University for undergrad. And having to move from going to a quarter system to a semester system, when we have a couple months to like recuperate, move here, start my job. It was a lot of self-compassion on my part, because I was like, what is this place? Who are these people? I don't know what grad school is going to be like. And like, I didn't know what honestly, I didn't know what my expectations were, because I heard like different narratives about it. Like, okay, being a first gen student, like I had no one to ask what the experience was like, especially for the program that I was applying for. And so I would say it was a little bit like a shock at first. Okay, I'm navigating, I gotta do this one thing, let me do this one thing. And there's like a lot of stuff initially, it's very front heavy, at least in my experience. And then I think like a month or so later, and thankfully, I met a lot of like great people who kind of took me in and like, it was like, hey, you're my friend now. And that truly helped me a lot, easily transition into like my role here. And then being a grad student, and they were just like, include me, like, here's like what we do here. And they were like second years in our program or in a different program. And I think, again, those relationships helped me like be here and find a home here. And I think that really made my transition so much easier. Not the fact that I knew people here, but the fact that there were people who were willing to meet me, which was really
Yeah, it's hard for me to talk about the transition from undergrad to grad school because I took even longer than y'all. But let's see, I guess transitioning into grad school from like working or just sort of general transition into grad school, I think one of the really common feelings at first is like overwhelmed and feeling like you don't even know what questions to ask, or if like a question is worth asking. And I guess one thing to just always know is that like everyone feels that way. So as you're transitioning into being a grad student, like just knowing that, especially the people who are there to support you, like advising services, or if you have a designated advisor, they are there to answer your questions. And not to ever feel like you shouldn't ask a question, because there's just no such thing.
And I think that for me, the transition was, a lot of imposter syndrome of like, can I do this? Like the last time I was even, yeah, and like I know it's, I guess, dramatic now, reflecting, but like I was, the last time I was in a class, like a higher level class was years ago. Like these people are probably like, they probably have backgrounds in psychology, or they have this, or they have that, and a lot of like, comparing, and like being there on that first day, like, am I capable of taking this class? Like, am I capable of getting good grades? I think that transition, that mindset made my transition at first difficult, because I was a lot of doubting myself. And it's so true. Like the second I was able to connect with people who had similar experiences, I was like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. And I can do this. It's such a scary beast when you don't have like something to go on with. Like I didn't have anyone in my life. I have one person in my life that went to grad school and, you know, they lived states away. So I didn't really know what it looked like, what it sounded like, what it felt like. And there was a lot of fear, but and you ease into it. You're like, oh, it's not that bad. I don't know, like riding a roller coaster.
Yeah, mine is pretty similar. Like, like I said, I didn't go directly from my undergrad into my graduate program. So there was a break, and that was a little daunting because there's a break and you're like, oh, I haven't been in school for a while and I don't know what the demand is, and that's scary. And then it's like the comparing, that was not great. We're in the same program. And for me in particular, since I came from a degree that was radically different from anything like mental health, I was very concerned that everyone was going to know more than I did. I had no idea if that was true or not, but I was like, this is my background and it's not this. And so it felt like I was starting from scratch, and that's scary. And then eventually, like, I got to talk to people, and like, it was a common experience. And, you know, like, there were some people who had psychology degrees, but a lot of people were just in the same sort of boat. And what really helped me was just leaning into my background. Like, I had a different perspective. Everyone brings a different perspective, and that's good. Because then people aren't just saying the same thing over and over again. You bring in new things. And that gave me a lot of confidence, really helped me transition into my grad program.
I also went right after undergrad. Class 2021, Zoom University was not fun at all. But I guess I wasn't really scared academically. Like I had just graduated. I was like, I can do hard things. Like, I know grad school is going to be hard, but I can accomplish hard things. I've proven that by getting this undergraduate degree. And so I guess like it was kind of like the buildup to like moving to Colorado. I moved from the East Coast, and yeah, like those were the things I was scared about. I'm like, oh, I've never been away from my family. Adulting is hard. Don't really have to pay bills. Now they're all on me. What does health insurance look like for as a grad student? And like, how do I, like, my spiritual identity is really important to me. Like, how do I find a church? It was like more about the logistics of being away on my own, like really on my own for the first time. That were some of like the hurdles that I had to work through. Lots of tears those first few months. I bought a car because I was like, yup, I'm gonna bike in Colorado. And I was like, nope, I'm not gonna bike in Colorado. So yeah, like those were the things that like were like the hurdles that I worked through. And I just leaned on my support system. Like, it was weird. Like, I felt closer to my family after moving further away. And then like trying to make friends as a grad student with like, I'm like in a cohort of 8 people now, which is really small, but like trying to like step outside of my comfort zone and be like, hey, want to be friends with me? It's kind of like kindergarten in that way, like trying to make friends. So I think like adulting and life were the things that I found were the biggest like learning curve.
Thank you.
I actually just have a follow-up question because you brought up like academics, and I think that's a really good question, because I think even when I was an undergrad and went to graduate school, I was very, very scared about like, I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be extra, extra hard. I don't know how I can do this. So tell us, like, does it feel, well, because it could be like a passion career that y'all are wanting to do, does it feel easier to take like, to learn some of those things? Or do you feel like what you've done in grad school helped you prepare how to study better or how to read, stuff like that? I don't know. I felt when I went to graduate school, this was work I wanted to do. So for some reason, I was able to pick up and learn quicker, better than when I was an undergrad, but it made sense because I was still learning. But how was that experience for you academically? Like, did you feel like it kind of it's still challenging, but did it feel like it was easier to manage in graduate school because you had skills or passions regarding that?
I guess I can start with that. I'm a very emotionally driven man, and so going into like a career or graduate program is like this too. Definitely made it easier. I'm like, well, I can't wait to read this book about emotionally focused therapy. It's gonna be so exciting. And do a lot of reading for fun. And I would say my undergrad, because I had no human development family studies major in my undergrad. And it was, I majored in sociology and double minored in psychology and anthropology, and within those classes, I made like a smorgasbord of like human relationships and like stuff like that. And so I think being in like that, again, that framework and that mindset, like I really love this, I'm really passionate about it, I'm ready to go. And I think I approached my academics in grad school based with that like curiosity and like that willingness, like, hey, I may not get it first, but that's okay, because like I really love this. And so I think coming out from that perspective definitely made it easier. And luckily I did have faculty members who were like, hey, you're going to grad school, because I was like, oh. And I know we're all in like different programs, and luckily, I think some faculty members within my program have been really helpful in like kind of like, hey, Josh, it's okay. Here are some things. Here's how you navigate this thing. I was like, oh, I put so much pressure on myself to do it this right way, and to find that like, hey, like we're exploring these things, working on it. And so I was very pleasantly surprised and how like comfortable and how easy like my own passions kind of came out, and how my academics brought out the best in me to where I could engage with them the best way possible. And so I'm really privileged to have that synthesis of like both emotions and background and just like doing what I want to do to make it easier. Right, thinking.
I think, grad school work is just different. Like, I don't know that it's harder, and it might just be because, you know, there might be a big piece to that, that is you're getting to focus more directly on what it is that you really want to be learning about. But I think there's an added layer that's very like self-directed, kind of making meaning and making the connections between the different classes that you're in, that, you know, and kind of pulling, at least, and maybe this is, yeah, at least in a PhD program, like ultimately it's a lot about the classes that you're taking, but it's also about like building up your area of focus and what you want to be studying in your original research questions and things like that. So, so yeah, it's more, I think maybe it takes more like space in your brain of critically thinking about what you're learning, and not just to prep for the test or to write the paper on it. It's like really thinking, like, what does this mean to me? How does this connect to the other things that I'm learning about? And what do I want to do with this knowledge that I'm learning?
I really couldn't agree more with that, like, and I will also say, like, when I first got here and I realized I got over those doubts, I was telling everyone, I was like, oh, this is kind of easy. But I think like upon reflection in the second year, it was easy because I enjoyed it. And it was like, I think undergrad feels like, yeah, like that, like preparing for the test, like I need to just cram, I need to do this, well, I guess I'm still at totally not at the library, but in a different, more meaningful way. And I think it's a different experience when you do make meaning and you do want to critically think and you do want to like, where can I take this? How can I apply this versus when you don't? And you're just trying to get through grad school, like then you lose that meaning and then it's like, why'd you come? So I think that like, when you do choose a program and you do, if you do want to go to grad school, not just thinking about it from the undergraduate lens, because I feel like the undergraduate lens is really just making it to the end. It's 4 years of like hell, from my recollection. And this feels like 2 years of like, wow, have I learned so much, and I actually feel like I can take this and go places and help people. And with the way our society works, you gotta do that undergraduate piece first, and a lot of, I guess all grad programs probably get to this, so. Yeah. Good question.
Yeah, I want to kind of
agree with this passion piece and this drive and this meaning, because that's made a lot of impact. Like, I also think that there are things about the program that I was surprised were easier to handle or academically easier to kind of consume. But I think there's a part of it that is like, I'm interested in this content, and I don't have to worry about all of these other things that are part of the degree program. This is just what I'm doing. And it's also a little different because in our master's program, it's like you start seeing clients very soon. Like your second semester, you are seeing clients. So learn what you need to learn, and you're learning it because you kind of need to, because you're about to work with people in real time, and you need those skills. You need that knowledge. And that also plays a big factor into it. And so I think it's almost easier to learn because it's like you want it and you need it, and you're about to apply it very quickly. And so yeah.
This is not an endorsement. Sabrina and I studied together a lot, and she does a lot of her readings. I don't do a lot of my readings, but it's okay. And the way that, like, academically, the program that I'm in is set up is you have an assistantship as a part of it, not to make somebody else thunder with questions. But the assistantship is like half of like the degree program, and it like your experiences in. Ooh.
Oh.
You're talking about my lights are off. The experiences that you're getting in the degree, in the assistantship, really inform like what you're talking about in class, all the assignments that you do, how you're like bringing in your past experiences to inform your experiences. But yeah, I remember having a conversation with Sabrina, like, I feel like I'm doing this wrong because this feels so easy. Like, I'm like, I go home, I like skim my reading, I write a paper, and like, I was like, and then that's it. Now the second year, it feels a little differently intense, but, yeah, like, I think I'm interested in what I'm learning. My program allows for me to have, like, give my unique lens, talk about my past experiences, and disagree honestly with the readings that undergrad didn't really allow me to like critique. So I think it's easier. I co-sign on that.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm going to combine a couple questions that students submitted. So many of you during the last question reflected kind of comparison between graduate school and undergrad and your different experiences with that. And so this also reflects back on undergraduate. But so the questions are, what makes a competitive graduate school applicant? And if you can speak a little bit about what you were like as an undergraduate student, your grades, any student organizations, teaching assistantships. And I think there's this expectation that students might put upon themselves. I hear this as an instructor of, I'm not getting a 4.0, therefore I will never get into graduate school. So if you can just speak to that sort of self-doubt and those sort of expectations that we hear in terms of what makes someone competitive.
I would say, I think the first thing, and actually, as I was applying for PhD applications, I was going with the same feelings, like, whoa, I just did this, but I'm doing it again. And it's like, okay, like, especially through applications, like, okay, how can I demonstrate like advisor fit? How can I say my Q? Because like a lot of applications are like, hey, like, tell us a couple of faculty members you'd love to work with and like their research and stuff like that. And what really stands out in graduate applications, like, hey, like, oh, the student's really interested in this research. Oh, we have these people who can help them and develop them and mentor them. A pro tip right there. And I would say, me in undergrad, even though I do a million things now, I was doing like 2 million things then. I was a really crazy student. I was an RA for 3 years. I was also involved in the Residence Hall Association. I did nonprofit work for fun. It wasn't part of my program to do it, but I wanted to do it because I was like, hey, like, this is the work I want to do and I want to give back to my community. And that helped me feel like I could, like, hey, like, I think I can go to the graduate program and graduate degree. I would say in terms of GPA, it's like the classes, like I was pleasantly surprised that when I was going through the application process, like, what classes that you take, we see like what your major GPA is, like this is your focus. We can see like you may not have gotten like an A in biology 101, but every class pertaining to human relationships, I'm seeing you're putting in tremendous effort here. And so I know the graduate application process in interviews can be really scary. And at least from my experience, I was pleasantly surprised by the faculty here when they interviewed me. And they were asking me very great questions that were more so like humanizing my experience and like, who are you as a person navigating these things? How does this apply to you? How can I put myself into like academics and things like that? And I think that part of it kind of, and not the last question, that feeling of just like ownership, like, hey, like Josh, if you have ownership and like guidance over like your own academic journey here, what do you want to say? What are you passionate about? How can we apply this? And it's not just me like getting an A on a test or something. I passed all these classes. It's like, who are you as a person? What drives you? And like, how do you want to engage in these things? And so that was also like one of the biggest differences, at least to me, from undergrad to graduate school, was like, okay, like ownership is on you, and let's bring out you as a human being into what you're doing in the context, not necessarily looking at your grades or looking at your performance of the output. We're wondering about your process of doing this.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. For PhD programs, I really think the application is about fit. So something that's really good to do is just do a lot of research on your topic of interest and who's doing work in that field. That I spent like a whole summer just doing that, putting together this massive list of people doing the work that I was interested in. And I actually didn't pay as much attention to the specific program or even the department. Like when I applied to PhD programs, I applied to a wide range. I applied to some like clinical psych programs, some counseling psych programs, applied developmental science. And especially, human development and family studies is kind of interdisciplinary, and a lot of places have different names for, there's not kind of like one unified naming system for these degrees. So that's one thing that I would say about like what makes a strong graduate school applicant, would be to really focus on that fit if PhD is kind of what you're going for. Yeah, and I was an English major undergrad, so I didn't have any of the like stats background that I think a lot of people who apply for programs in human sciences do. I had never taken a psychology course. And so just all that is to say that like, that's okay. I mean, it seems like you're probably all human development and human studies students, or in this general area. But if you decide that you want to go to grad school in something totally different, like don't let the fact that you didn't have any formal coursework in that area deter you from pursuing what you have developed a genuine interest in. And if you can make a case that like you know this, you have ideas about this general area and you have things that you want to pursue studying in it, then it's okay that you don't have the previous coursework, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know everyone's backgrounds, but I was probably the biggest slacker out of all of these wonderful panelists when I was an undergrad. And that's to say, like, my priorities were like just getting through class and going out on the weekends probably. I was in a sorority, so very involved in that. And I guess not to sell myself short too much, I worked all throughout college because I paid my way to college. So a lot of my time was spent like, working at the convenience store while doing homework or, trying to get through classes. So with that, like, my GPA also was like a 3.2, like it really wasn't great. And that I think was also led to that, like, I'm never gonna get into grad school. And with that work experience in between, and I just have like over a decade at this point of just working with students, I think I am able to demonstrate my true passion for kids and youth and K-12 in general. luckily, like with this field, it takes a holistic approach. Like I did not take the GRE. That was another deterrent for me. I was like, no shot, I'm gonna take the GRE and get a good score. And I have like severe test anxiety, so even the thought of it, I was like, no, thank you. And this program is, there's no GRE requirement. And it's kind of funny because that's where I started with my applications. It's like, who doesn't require the GRE? And went from there. And luckily, I found a really great program that really does take the holistic approach and looks at all of you. Who are you? What got you here? And me being vulnerable on those applications, like those grad school, what do they call them? Why am I blanking? Personal statement. That was a place where I was able to really show my stuff, that my grades and my, like, I didn't do like any other extracurriculars, but yeah, all that stuff didn't show. So I think that to say, like, if you are a person that didn't get amazing grades in undergrad and you were more focused on, you know, the social part or, you know, working just to make it to the next semester, it's still possible.
So I worked very hard on my undergraduate degree. I had like a 3.8, so not a 4.0, but still pretty high. And I paid for it because I was very burnt out. I didn't want to do anything academic. I think there is a price for throwing it in that way. And I wasn't ready to do any sort of education for a while. And that was something that kind of was to my advantage once I did start applying, and kind of, I think, helped me as an applicant because I was honest, and it came down to honesty for me, I think, in my application, because I was honest that like I had some trouble and I had some confidence problems, and I was not sure, but I knew that I wanted to do this. And so like the personal statement was a good way for me to be like, hey, this is kind of my background and I'm not going to lie here, because it comes down to fit as well. If they can't accept you for what you're bringing, then they're not a good fit. And some of that comes from research, and some of that comes from the personal statements, from the letters of recommendations, and definitely 100% from the interview. Because in the interview, I was like, I have a philosophical background. And while I really love talking to people, I don't know if that's enough. I have no idea. All I know is that I want to learn, and I want to do this. And this is what I want to do with the information and the application that I am wanting to do. And I was just honest, because we have no control over if we get in or not. We can only be honest and be who we are in that moment. And I think that's more important, because you're going there if you get in, and you have sold yourself on what you have just done. So make sure what you're selling yourself as is something that you are ready to put forward. And so honesty and fit were probably the strongest things about my graduate application for me. And I also kind of low-key chose not to do the GRE as well. I saw that and I was like, that's nice.
It was like, so in student affairs, lots of programs. I applied to like 6 different programs and none of them required the GRE. And I was like, ooh, I had taken it, didn't do well. Like, yeah, we're just gonna ignore that. But yeah, in undergrad, I was really involved. I went hard. I had a really good GPA. I had leadership positions. Yeah, I was that student you saw everywhere. You're like, you're doing so much. I'm still that way, and I'm working on it. And so, yeah, like, I guess I've had the luxury of being on the other side. I help run the like interview process for the program that I'm in. And they really do take like a holistic approach. Getting to like sit in the room with like the faculty that are like looking at the applications, running through their interview notes. They're advocating for you, right? Like, they're like, oh, like, they didn't do well. Like, if you have a low GPA, they're looking, like, Josh said, like, they're looking at those courses that actually like connect to the program that you're applying to be in. Yeah, I feel like we're honestly, like, in my mind, we were really rooting for people and trying to find like, are we a good fit for this person? Like, maybe it's us that's the problem. And how do we like reconcile in our program, how to support this student? So yeah, like, I think being a good applicant really just, putting your best foot forward and saying like how you align with the program and how you want to be supported in the program, like that's just as much a part of it as what you'll get, like, what do you want to get out of that program? Like making sure that you can see that. And then once you get those offers back, like, honestly, you get to be picky, like press them, ask the questions in that interview, make sure that you're figuring out, like, what are they about? Are they putting on a facade? If you get time alone with those people in the program, ask them questions about their experience. Usually they'll be honest with you. And if you don't get time with students, that's also a reflection of the program. Because like, why wouldn't they want you to talk to their current students, right? That's their selling point. So yeah, those are some of the things to keep in mind.
We did get a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe, well, this is kind of a larger question. I think maybe we'll have this be a final question, take like a 2-minute break. Is that cool? We can get something to eat or go to the bathroom and then come back. So the questions are around affording graduate school and assistantships if you've had to work outside of graduate school and what that looks like. So this could likely take lots of different avenues, but I'll just read from the chat, and I think this is a combined piece. So what resources helped you with any concerns about affording graduate school? What kind of jobs are you holding while in graduate school? And is it common to balance graduate school and a part-time job? Darian, you mentioned an assistantship being part of your program. I don't know if that's true for everyone. So if you could speak to that piece.
Okay, in terms of funding graduate school, that was a big concern for me, especially coming from like being financially independent. It's like somehow I paid for undergrad. What do I do now? I kind of pulled together all my experience in those I was working with undergrad. And as I mentioned, I was a resident assistant for 3 years. And so I was working with people who were working in student affairs at the time. We were my supervisors like, hey, listen, I really want to go to grad school at this university. And even though I'm not a student affairs and higher education major, so being my assistantship currently is being an assistant residence manager. I was an assistant residence director last year. And that's usually reserved for folks who are within the student affairs and higher education degree program here at CSU. And knowing that, like, okay, I'm going for a different program, and I still really want to do this work that I'm used to doing and I'm passionate about. And I think this as like an overall thing, I think folks having another job outside of the graduate program is very commonplace. In fact, a lot of us do, or a lot of folks I've met have like 1 or 2 jobs, and you don't need to have like more than 1 job. But I really like fought to be here in terms of that like assistantship. I was like, hey, like I was messaging the folks like, hey, like I know I'm not in this program, and I like, I know we like this is research folks in this, like, but I'm wondering if you have a vacancy. If you could give me an interview, I would love to talk about this and like what that possibility is, and just even like having the courage to reach out to folks who are like across a different department who are having these assistantship. I highly recommend it because they're like, okay, yeah, like we'll give you an interview if we have space, and they did have space. And the folks that I was working with in undergrad who also went here, or who were also like working in student first for a really long time, and the assistantship that I wanted to go for. I was like, hey, can you tell me about it? Can you like put me in touch with some people? How can I build those relationships for the thing that I'm trying to go for? And how can I navigate that? And so I would say, even though if like assistantship isn't in your program, or it's not like immediately there, and it builds up like the skills or something you're passionate about, I would just like go for it. I would just talk to people like, hey, what does that look like? And before I even got that, I was calling people here at CSU. I was like, here, I'm a grad student in this program, and I want to know about funding. What are scholarships that are available? Like, how have you been doing it? And if you do plan on going out of state, I do highly recommend getting that residency. Because that's a big thing. I'm like, okay, if I have to pay a lot, how can I pay less? Teachers have been very proactive about that.
Yeah, I think definitely asking about scholarships, fellowships, any kinds of funding opportunity, and knowing that, like, I don't know. Sometimes I think people feel weird about asking about financial things. And I think that people understand, like, funding graduate school is really challenging, and so they want to give you that information. I think that information isn't always as, like, readily publicized as it should be. So you do have to do some probing and some digging around sometimes, but yeah, asking those questions. And I think anywhere that you apply, you'll have like a point person typically, who can be, your first point of contact about, so what is the funding situation? With PhD programs, it is 5 years plus. So, I took the approach of I'm only going to apply to fully funded PhD programs and I don't know, maybe everybody doesn't know this, but a lot of times for PhD programs, they'll cover the tuition, the cost of your coursework. And then you have like a graduate research assistantship or a graduate teaching assistantship too that gives you like a stipend for living expenses. And I mean, that was the only option that I had. I'm sure that there are other ways to fund PhD education too, but it's worth thinking about, really prioritizing, looking at programs that can provide you with that funding. And then there are some like large sort of national fellowships through institutions like NIH or the National Science Foundation, depending on your field. So those are things to kind of make yourself aware of. Those happen like every year, and I think regardless of where you are, what university you're at, you can apply for them. And then also, like, I had worked for a while, so I have, some financial resources from having done that. So, everyone's journey is different, but that's always can be an option. Like if you think, I'm not really sure if I want to go now, maybe I should, it can be a good financial decision to kind of take some time and work and then come back to school too.
So actually, I find it funny still that when I got accepted into the program, at the bottom of my acceptance was like, the Career Center is hiring. And I was like, perfect, I need a job. So I immediately applied to the Career Center the day I got accepted. And I think I had an interview there a couple months later, and I've been working there ever since. It's a full plug, best place on campus. Love the Career Center, please. And that has helped me pay for like my bills in terms of school. I know that like debt makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but I am the poster child for student loan debt at this current moment between undergrad and grad. And that's real. And I think that for me, that's okay, seeing as it's going to get me where I need to go. And those are the cards that I was dealt. So I am leaning heavily on the public service forgiveness loan, which allows those who work in public service, government agencies, nonprofit organizations, there's a couple other things under there that, you pay for about 10 years at your minimum and the rest gets covered. But you have to stay in those government agencies for 10 years, at least 120 months. And since I've always planned to work in public service, it works for me. And like I said, like that's not an easy swallow for some people. I had to get real used to it in undergrad because I had to finish. And I think that it's important for people to like hear that because like I said, debt makes people really uncomfortable. It's very scary for them. And if that is the only way, that's. And you are able to educate yourself more on how to get out of that space. And with, you know, higher education degree, that salary comes with it. And with that, hopefully, it all comes together. So that is how I'm paying. That is what I do. Those are the questions. And I don't have an assistantship. We don't have that. We have internships that are unpaid, 20 hours a week. So that's.
So my way is not the way many people are going to fund their any of their degrees, because I was a veteran. I am a veteran. I am. And so I've used the GI Bill, and I am on a VRNE right now, and that pays for it. So I can't, unless there are veterans in around or in this, that's the way I've done it. And I do not recommend going the route that I went to get it. So that's just me.
So with lots of higher ed programs, they'll actually have like the assistantship as a part of your experience in the program. And so when I was interviewing for the different programs, I would interview with faculty to get into the program. And then I would go through another interview process for an assistantship. And essentially the assistantship covers tuition. And they give you a stipend on top of that, for like living expenses. And so, yeah, like the only thing I'm responsible for paying here at CSU are my student fees, which are still really expensive and still really annoying. 'Cause I'm like, I work for you all, the fees pay me, like why am I paying myself? So yeah, I think that's, yeah, and it was like advice that I had heard from people. They were like, you're gonna go into education, don't pay for any of the programs that you do. And so that's how I made this work for me. Yeah, and like comparing financial packages is another big thing, because it was like, I applied to a school in Maryland, and I was make like the stipend amount, they like kind of tell you what you might make, but look into like the cost of living in the place, because that will impact it. Like if they're gonna give you like $3,000 a month, but in order to live, you need $5,000, then maybe that's not the ideal situation for you. And then also here at CSU, we have supplemental opportunities. So you can have the assistantship, which is like 25 hours a week, and you get like the base stipend. And then the supplemental assistantships are about 5 hours a week on top of that full-time one. And I have 2 supplemental ones. So I'm working like 35 hours a week on paper, as well as being a full-time student, because I need that extra income to support the life that I
Great. Thank you. Any follow-up questions on that before we have a quick break? Is that okay? Okay. Why don't we, so for those online, maybe we'll come back in 5 minutes. Does that sound okay? Okay. 7:08. We'll do, yeah, 7:08.
Or this closes this.
Okay, so I think we'll go ahead and come back at 7:08. We were just discussing, I think we'll maybe have a few more questions till 7:30 and then just kind of let it go from there. We have just gonna say like a little drawing for raffle prizes for attendees and stuff too. And then if we get out of here a little early, I think that that's okay, right? The gift of time. So, Hema, do you have, are there any other questions on your list that you want to be sure to
Yeah, sure.
touch on?
Yeah, so I think I do have like, might be a big question, but I have a question of like, what is one thing you wish you knew before you got into graduate school that you think might have been helpful for you?
I think for me, it's more of a philosophical answer. That the things that I thought about myself that I thought people would care the least about were the things that actually like helped me succeed the most too. Or like, as I said earlier, my graduate program is really, in a way, the faculty have brought out the best in me and like my experiences, and even like submitting my grad school application, being encouraged, to, like, tell my story, who I was as a person, and just having that accepted, having that being a point of the work that I do, like me and taking ownership over who I am as a person in my life experiences and putting it into my work has been the most gratifying and joyous thing I've been experiencing in the last couple of years. I was like, well, I didn't know like that you cared that I, grew up this way or had these experiences, or, being a first-time student going through higher education and seeing less people that were like me and had the experiences that I had. I was like, oh, okay, well, clearly my experiences don't get degrees, or, this isn't the thing that exists here. Whereas like I was like, once I was able to feel comfortable and people were like, hey, we want to know about you, Bradley, share this with us. I was able to see that my life experience, I was as a person, was something valued and was like a big part of like my journey as a student. I was like, wow, like I was bringing out the best in me. So I think knowing that like I could bring that side of me into like academia would have been something that would make me less anxious going in. I was like, well, I just get to go in and be myself, right? I get to like be my authentic self in whatever way that exists. Like that's amazing. And if I knew of that opportunity sooner and that it would be like this way, I'm like, oh, great, I can't wait to go grad school. No matter what happens, like,
Yeah, I feel like I'd say something along the same lines, like that your experience, even if it doesn't fit like the mold of what you think someone in grad school should have as their experience, is really valuable. And I think a big thing in higher education and just like in research or clinical work, whatever you're doing, is fresh perspectives, because like a lot of stuff, you'll do a ton of reading and it's these like seminal pieces of work and these theories that people have been, recycling over and over. And I think that in any way that fresh ideas can be sort of interjected into that, that's where you add value. So like whatever your experience is, it's going to bring something unique and valuable to your grad school experience.
Yeah, this is a tough question. I think what I'm coming up with is I wish I knew how much I would change, even in just it hasn't even been 2 years. It's been a year and some change, maybe like a year and a couple months. But I think personally, like especially in this area, like if grad school doesn't change you at least a little bit, you're doing it wrong. Because like just how it's impacted me and like changed my ideas and changed like how I can like communicate. Even like counseling has taught me how to talk, if anything, and how to like express myself and while I'm simultaneously learning how to help people express themselves. So it was really cool, especially that first year, just really growing and changing and being like, what is happening? I'm actually like now battling with like a lot of like these things in my mind, or like things that have happened in my past that I need to address now in order to be a sufficient leader in this field. And it's like, what? So it's like, it feels like the mirror is really going to be on, everyone else, the people you're working with, your clientele. Really, it's on you. and you grow so much and you change so much, and I don't think I thought that would happen so quickly.
Yeah. Same, just same, all of that. I didn't realize that, like, it's counseling and we're in it for counseling, whether it's school or like mental health or career. And you don't realize how much self-reflection you have to go through just to be able to start, when you're working with these clients, to just be like, okay, like, these are your problems. And maybe something's coming up for me, or maybe I haven't addressed this yet, or maybe there's something going on that I haven't explored or something. And in order to do good counseling, you have to really understand yourself first, because if you can't understand yourself, like, at a foundational level enough to even just like be able to manage yourself when you're in the room with someone who is in the throes of crisis, you don't know how you would react if you haven't gone through that self-reflection, and that might not be what the client needs at the time. And so I did not realize how much self-work I was going to need to do for this program. It has been substantial. Like, it has been substantial. And especially for this field, like, that's something to really consider, is like, how are you ready to do that sort of self-work? Because you can't, I do not think that you can do this well without really understanding what's going on with you.
I guess the thing I wish I knew is like, life happens, you know, in grad school, like you have a plan, but like, stay flexible, and like, it's okay to change your mind. Like, if, right now I'm thinking about like, what are the things that like I'm like deeply committed to, and why am I deeply committed to those things? But yeah, like, you're gonna be okay, and like, if you change your mind, you change your mind, and you have all the authority to change your mind and choose a path that's best for you. And I know that looks different for people depending on like all the factors that make up who you are and like where you come from. So just really knowing that like, it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to decide that something's not for you. You decide to stay in the program, you decide to stay in the program, but if you don't want to work in the field after the program, like, that's okay. Like, what have you learned through the program that you can go and do something else, and like really just like follow your dreams, and you're allowed to change through this program.
Are there any questions?
There's something in the chat right now, but there was a student submitted question online. I think if you could talk about the different application processes, so just like a really logistical question of, you know, what each program looks like, what they require, maybe differences in timelines, how you stayed organized or through that process of trying to navigate all the different expectations of the programs you're applying to. And then if there was interview involved, a group interview, and just kind of talk about your experience with the application process.
Yeah, at least for the program I'm currently in, and as I'm going through, grad school applications again for education. What they normally require is at least a lot of them require 3 letters of recommendation. Some universities say like, okay, 2 academic, 1 professional, or whatever that looks like. And then a CV, and then like a personal statement. And some universities are a little different. I navigated, say, University of Denver was wanting me to like write essays about my life experience. It's like, hey, don't prove your academic worth. Show us who you are as a person. And I was like, oh, okay, we're getting deep already. But some of them have a very like basic format. It's like, hey, within like 1 to 2 pages, this many words, include these things, and you can follow it word for word. Include your question, include the question in your answer. Yeah, and to stay on top of that, because I was kind of going from this perspective, like, okay, I better be on top of it, because otherwise, like, I might be behind. Like, I'm very proactive. I try to be at least. I started, I would say, at the end of my junior year in undergrad, just to be ahead. I think if you want to start like in your senior, that's fine too. And I kind of just made a little checklist. I took note cards and I put like, okay, here's a grad program. Here's what I need. And by this date. And then I just progressively and practically reached out to, those faculty members who I wanted the letters of recommendation for. And I even did that with my PhD, like over the summer. I was like, hey, Tony, can you let me write a letter of recommendation for so-and-so? And like, progressively building those relationships and identifying who the folks who will ask is really important. And like, the sooner the better, like reaching out, like, hey, like my application's already due for 6 months from now. I was wondering, would you be willing to do that? And finding out well ahead of time. And something I also did is that I made a template for when I would reach out, like what I would say when I reach out to these professors and what I would say as a reply. And so it's like, hey, dear so-and-so, we've been like in this circumstance, like I took these classes with you and was wondering if you'd be willing to let me write it this way. And that's how I stay organized. That's how I help myself feel less stressed about the process. It's like even making the little steps at first to feel like I'm on top of it. Because it does seem like a lot. And I would say, like, at least for me, the hardest part about it is clicking submit after you have everything in. So it's like getting the little steps, like, okay, in this like 2 months, I need to make sure I got my letters of recommendation. And once like they say yes and I submit them, they have to do that. And that's off of my plate. So what do I do next? I'm writing those things. And again, including faculty members and people you trust and you value, like, mentorship wise, to review your materials. Like, hey, does this look good? Right? Or like, where should I edit on this, right? And kind of build that self-confidence. So I would say like, build on top of it, even if that means starting small, like looking at programs. It's like making a list of what those requirements are, whether or not you need the GRE. I also took the GRE because CSU's website wasn't updated, so I took it and I learned I didn't need it. So I was too proactive in that part. And so if you're not like, if wherever you are, you're stressed out, like you'll get there, you'll be okay. And for at least for master's programs, I know a lot of my applications were due like in, late December, if not January. PhD programs tend to be a little bit earlier. A lot of my programs are due like December 1st, one's even like in late November. So that's just like a timeline. And so being aware of those timelines and when those things are due, prioritizing off of that. Just staying organized and like, okay, one step at a time. Big steps are made of small movements, right? Applying progress to the next step.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I would add on to that. So I think for PhD programs, like I mentioned, the fit with advisors is really important. That's how a lot of people kind of go about selecting programs. And one thing that was recommended to me was to reach out to those individuals before you went through the process of applying, because some years faculty members don't take students. So, and again, like it differs across different programs. A lot of PhD programs, you get accepted to work with that advisor. Like that advisor has a certain number of spots of students that they can take on any given year. Other programs, you get accepted to the program and then you get assigned to an advisor. But one nice first step that I did was reach out to faculty members and just ask. And it was like over the summer prior to, applications were due in December. In the summer, I just sent out some emails saying like, guys, looking at your research, seems like a really good fit. I'd love to find a time to chat if you can. And then you can just get like a little bit more information, about whether they're even taking students, and then just establish that first contact, which can be nice. So that's just one thing I would add on. This is not really like a practical or logistical point, but the process of at least for me, like the process of deciding to apply all the way through to applying and then waiting again to hear, like that's a long time. It can be, nearly a year, potentially. And so for me, it was really important to like, once I decided that I was gonna apply, to almost treat that decision as if I'm gonna go. Like, I think from an internal standpoint, like there's a lot of points along in that interval where doubt can creep in and you can be like, oh, like, yeah, this isn't the right thing. Or you tell someone that you're thinking about this and it's not exactly the reaction that you would want to get. Most of the time, people obviously are going to give you, who are in your sphere are going to give you a good reaction. But there are people who are going to go, oh, like, what are you going to do with that? Or, just, I think it's normal to have some doubts and questioning, but I think it was helpful for me to kind of be like, once I decided to apply, it was like, as long as I get in somewhere, like, I'm gonna go. So that's just my own experience.
I love that quote, big movements are made of small steps, because and what you said is also very true. Like that time from deciding and to the end, for me, it was like a full year. I decided April 2020, I was going to grad school, and December 2020, I had applied. So I am very type A, so I love planning out things. So I made a Google Doc of every school. Every school that had the program one. And then I re-narrowed that using like, how much does it cost? Where is it at? What are the pros of living in this place? Because I knew I wanted to get out of North Carolina. And come over here. And so that Google Doc was really helpful for me in eliminating things. Because at first it's like, oh my God, there's so many schools. But when you really list it out of like what your top priorities are and then eliminate them. And then I have like my top 5. And even reflecting now, that's actually a point of privilege that I did apply for schools, because those are application fees. So that is something I did not consider even then, of like, oh, this is like, I don't remember, it's between $60 and $90 for each application on top of the time commitment that you're putting into those applications. So if like money is a concern, like I would also just start saving, or like, asking people if you have those people who can help you. And, maybe making a Google Doc and ranking and doing that research and, and giving yourself time, because the less time you have, the more stressful it is. But if you give yourself a lot of time, it helps tremendously. And those grad personal statements, you grind it out like a paper, you can get it done, probably in 4 hours or less. But you also need to return to it a lot of times, because you're never going to be like, this is perfect. Always it's going to feel like, oh man, what else could I add, or should I take out less? And I remember some schools were like, here's 20 questions, answer all of them. And one school was like, you have 1 page to answer the same questions. And that was where that was tricky for me. Things to consider in that process.
I like your point of time, because that was highly relevant to me. Because I knew I was getting the inclination that I wanted to do a master's program in like May 2020, but it was 2020 and I had a lot on my plate and there was a lot going on, and it kept getting pushed down. It kept getting pushed down. And I would, like, in moments and pockets of moments, I'd be like, oh, right, I was going to do this. So I'd research. And so I was starting to narrow down. And then like a friend of mine was like, hey, like this is now October and I hadn't done a whole lot, but my friend was like, hey, you've been saying this, maybe you should get things together and just apply. And I did, like in the span of like a week, I got everything together, and I'm glad I did, because after that, just everything happened again. It was just like a combustion of my life. And I forgot I had applied until they were like, hey, we're interested in you. And we would like to set up a interview. So I like your point about life and how it happens. And I like your point about time, because I only applied to one place because that was all the that was all the bandwidth I had. And I mean, in retrospect, that's terrifying, because what if I didn't get in? And I completely forgot about the application that I had even applied. So when people were asking me about setting up a time for my interview, I was like, oh no, this is real. This really is happening, which I think was good, because then I was now into it again. But I don't think I was as prepared as everyone else here has been. It was definitely like if you find yourself in a situation where you are low on time and you are squeaking by, sometimes it really comes down to just being like, this is the best I've got, and I'm gonna, like, and I've reached out to people, I've written this paper, I've done it. It may have been within a week. Just hit that button, do it, and because you might, if you get into a situation where you keep forgetting or life just keeps hitting you, you're gonna miss that deadline. And so if you have that pocket of time and you know this is kind of your situation, cram it in, just cram it, do something, because it might still get through. Mine got through. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't. Like, I was asking my professors very close to the date. I was like, hey, I know this is really late. But this is what I want to do. And could you work a miracle for me? And I'm here, so I guess they did. So that's kind of the logistical thing I have. It's that if life is hitting you really hard, sometimes you just gotta, like, if you have a moment to breathe, just do it. Just do it, because you might not have another opportunity in that, and it might be another year before you get to go, or even to try.
I knew pretty early on in my undergrad degree that I wanted to go to grad school and that it'd be a student affairs program. And then in my senior year, or like summer before my senior year of undergrad, I'm also kind of type A. I put together a whole Excel sheet that like had the cost of like the program, cost of the like if it accepted waivers, how to get those waivers, links to the program, how many, like, yeah, it was real specific to like each program. And each program had its own page in the Excel sheet. I'm pretty proud of it. But yeah, and then it also had due dates, and I had organized them by due dates. I had way more programs that I had researched than like I ended up applying to. And like, as I decided not to apply to it, I would literally delete it and it'd be like, well, I'm not gonna go through all the work again. So I like had to make sure like these are the 6 or however so many I applied to. And then another strategy I had was just telling people about it, right? Like, I think that's a really good way to like have accountability like built in. If you're telling people like, oh yeah, I'm applying to grad school. And then like the next time you meet with that person, whether it's a friend, whether it's like a supervisor or advisor or mentor, they can kind of check in. And if you like ask them, be like, hey, can we like talk about this? Can you hold me accountable? I think people are pretty open to doing that. And then the interview process, is that part of it? Like what went down? So in student affairs, it's weird. I'm like, y'all should talk to each other about when your interview days are. It felt like February to like the end of March. Every weekend I was like in an interview. And mine were all during the pandemic. So I was just like, had set up a cute little station in my room. I had sticky notes all over my room about like answers to like common questions that I felt like they would ask. Like it was like, where are you from? And I was like, I might forget that. So yeah, I had like set up camp in my room for like grad school interviews, had picked out all the outfits, at least to like here, that I was gonna like wear. And yeah, and then I really just kind of put things on my calendars. I made sure I talked to my professors like, hey, I'm not gonna be in your class this day on Zoom because I'll be interviewing. And yeah, it just worked itself out. Two of the programs had the same interview days. I ended up thinking I like had COVID. Like I made myself so nervous. I like threw up and I was like, oh, I can't do it. And so like I ended up like telling them like, hey, can I like reschedule for like next week since this is all virtual? And they were really accommodating. So yeah, just trying to stay organized and really just getting through. It's kind of hectic. if y'all are thinking about applying like in your final year, it can get stressful, but just communicate with people early about like your goals and what you need, and they're typically pretty accommodating.
Can I add something? Because I did want to say something about the interview process and that stand out, like even if it's out of your comfort zone, to stand out and or be the first person to answer questions or be the first person to ask questions or volunteer to help with this activity. Like I was that person in all of my interviews and I got offered at all 3 out of 4 schools. 1 school did not interview me. But I think that it's really important to let yourself come through and stand out, even if you're like, this is very uncomfortable, because I was on Zoom doing this. It was very uncomfortable to be that person that's like, yep, this is, you know, whatever, but just do it, because it's the start of many more uncomfortable moments. Also with that, in one of my interviews, we had a counseling, like a mock counseling section, and I said something so stupid that this is my moment to now share that if you say something that you feel like was the wrong answer, it went over poorly. Just know that I had to ask to like start over. It was so embarrassing. And I remember leaving like in tears, like this is the worst day of my life. And now I can tell you, if you mess up, it's okay. You're human. And I still got offered to that school. So just be yourself, try your best. And also, especially if you're flying upstate, check the time. I also was 2 hours late to that, because I was on the East Coast. And you know, it's at 10 and 12, 2 different times and 2 different parts of the country. So definitely cross your T's that way too.
And remember that they're not looking for perfection. I think that's the thing, and especially in Zoom, like, you're like, I don't know how they're reading this, like, and a lot of programs are still offering hybrid interview models. So yeah, it's like, they're not looking for perfection or for you to have all the answers. Because I said something really stupid too. I literally was like, yeah, I like stalked this person, and they were like, what? And I was like, I'm so sorry, not appropriate, yeah. But like, they're not looking for perfection. They're looking for your capacity to be a good learner.
Yeah, just to add on to the thing that you said about not having all the answers, I think it's just as important in an interview process to come with your questions. And it kind of gets back to what we're talking about with like, it's not just a one-way street. They aren't looking only for if you fit with them. You should be looking to see if they're a good fit for you. So I did a ton of preparing, you know, trying to read people's papers and thinking that like, what were they gonna quiz me about them? Like, it's not that kind of, at least the interviews that I participated in were not that kind of dynamic. It's much more like they genuinely want you to be able to ask your questions to get as much information as you need. So spend time thinking about questions, not answering these.
One last question, if that's okay, because I feel like this. I think when I went to grad school, I didn't realize how mental health was such a big factor. I'm like, yeah, I'm crying every week, what is going on? So how were you able to maintain your mental health? I'm assuming like, were you able to establish a self-care before going into grad school, but also like, how were you able to maintain that? Is that's something that I know I wish someone had told me, is that your mental health does get worse in grad school. And I think if I had known, I probably would have also tried to like know how to maintain it. So how did you do that?
Yeah. So I knew coming into grad school, like, okay, people are saying it's a lot of work, and I am also very tech-banging, being the overfunctioner I am, which is a coping mechanism. It's fantastic. I knew it's like, okay, it's gonna be a rigorous 2 years. It's gonna be a lot of work, and I know what people are saying about grad school. So coming in, I set a lot of boundaries for myself. And then I was like, okay, I need to be comfortable setting boundaries with others, like saying like, I can't go out tonight, or I can't hang out with you tonight working on this thing. And then what that kind of entails, like, okay, like I at this time during the day, like I stopped working on academic work or job work at 6 p.m. Like I'm gonna sit down and watch something on Netflix, even though I will hate myself for it. I need this time to like not engage. And even though it was hard at first being as like somebody who's like, oh, I need to go, having those times now I'm used to like, oh, I'm sitting down. Oh, now I can disengage. It's also really helpful having like building those relationships and making those friends early on as well, especially those like that you can be authentic with and be honest about. It's like, hey, here's who I am. You know me now. It's been for 3 weeks. I want you to call me out on my BS. If you see me in the office past this time, tell me to go because I will be there. And I had my last year, Ayana, would get to the point where it's like, Josh, you were really working in the office this week. So I put she wouldn't even tell me. It would just like show up on my calendar and I was saying like, Josh is not coming to the office this day. Josh, do not come into the office. And my boss would be CC'd. I'm like, I guess. Because I also had to. So having those people in your life who are like, hey, hold me accountable to care for myself or call me out when I'm going overboard. Because grad school, it is a lot. And even like depending on your program, whether if it's a PhD program, like 5 years plus or 2 years of rigorous work, and different programs are like balanced differently. Some might be really front loaded, maybe easier after that. But kind of what I'm saying with that is that when you're say like running a marathon, you're not like sprinting the entire way. If you sprint for the first 2 miles, you're gonna be exhausted and the rest of it's gonna be such a drag. And what I like to say to my clients is like, when a car gets up to speed, it switches gears. Right, so like once we get to like where we're supposed to be, we feel good that we're being productive, right? Let's not go any further beyond our capacity for stress because that leads to burnout. So how do we have that balance? And so like every week, or sometimes day by day or hour by hour, like this is what I need to accomplish. And what be content with that, despite those parts of me that are like, Josh, you need to get this done. Like these deadlines are approaching. Like, no, I'll get it done because I know I've got it done before. And so at least for my mental health, that's been fantastic. It's like after like 5 p.m. I sit down, watch Netflix with my partner, I play with my dog, it's great, or like lunchtime, I'm like, even those little hours, little pockets of time, being opportunistic with your own self-care. Like, okay, right now I'm on a walk. Okay, like I can either drive across campus to go to this meeting or walk. I'm gonna walk and put my headphones on and have a wonderful 5-minute walk just for me. And so integrating that to balance out all the stress that you carry, all those deadlines and everything. Has been really stressful. And as I said, like big steps are made of small movements. So how can you put these little small movements to make that big step for your mental health?
Yeah, I think a lot of what you said just emphasizes that like it's fortunately I feel like it's not like anyone's going to make space for you to have that time for self-care. It really is about setting boundaries. It's about saying no to other things, but that's okay. And I think it's like arriving at that place of knowing that saying no to, even if it's saying no to yourself of do more. But like, no one's gonna be like, oh, here's a like nice little pocket of time where you genuinely like, there's nothing more you could possibly be doing because there is always more, but you don't have to do. So I think it's like that subtle realization. And yeah, just like prioritizing things that make you feel good and things that make you feel balanced as much as you do. The things that you need to do to be achieving your goals. I also think that I think it's possible to subtly, you don't have to flat out ask people when you're in the interview process or if you're considering potential advisors. You don't have to ask them like, directly about work-life balance or self-care, but I think there are sort of subtle ways to get a sense of like whether that's important to the people that you're potentially going to be working with and who are going to potentially have like some level of control over the amount of work that you have. So I think it's worth thinking about like how you might go about getting that information or getting a good sense of that. And yeah, like knowing whether like the people that you're potentially going to work with have a family. Like, not to say that everyone who has a family has a balanced life at all, but just, I don't know. I don't know exactly how I would go about it if I had to do it again. But I do think that you can kind of try to gauge how the people you'd be working with feel about that kind of thing.
Yeah, actually, that was one of my questions during my interview was like, how do you all support students through this program. And direct questions like that do show you like what they care about, what they're willing or what they do. And you can kind of tell if it's fluff. And if you do get the chance to talk to students, asking them that too, it's a good time to ask that. But I really couldn't agree more with what y'all have said, like, no one's gonna give you the space, you kind of have to take it and set limits for yourself. I think when I was teaching, it was like the second I left, I'm done. It's my mental, that was 8 hours and I gotta go home and yeah, like occasionally I have to work, but like, it's still the same now. Like I don't get out of class usually until 7 and I'm up at 7, if not earlier than that. So the second I get home, it's rare I'm doing work. And there are also times when I push it off so much, too much self-care, that now I'm at the library on Friday nights, or it's, I'm staying there all day Sunday. And like creating a good routine helps with my self-care, like built-in time that I know I'm gonna relax. I know I'm gonna see my friends, and again, that's just me putting things in boxes because I need to see it like that. But yeah, I think that's such a real question too, because I don't think anyone told me that it was gonna be like that. So I definitely wasn't prepared. Larissa has been there for one of my breakdowns. And that's why it's so good to like make those connections and you don't have to force it or anything, but definitely like make connections with people around you and open up to them. You have to open up to at least one person, if you don't have time to see a therapist, I get it, but you've got to at least open up to one person in your program who gets it. So you could say, are you great? Okay. It helps a lot with that. I'm not alone piece, which really has gotten me through grad school in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so I knew camp coming in, boundaries were gonna be my problem, and it was literally the first thing I worked on when I got here, because boundary work is self-care, because if you cannot manage your boundaries and are able to say no, or to be like, this isn't good for me, or this is too much, that's good for me, or like start being really sensitive to the needs of not only your mental health, but your body as well, because that's easy. That's so easy to forget and just write off. Then that's like the royal road, at least for me, to like a mental problem, or just to any sort of just degradation of either my body or my mind. And so I cannot agree more with boundary work, with just being like, I also, at the end of the day, I get home and I'm like, it's like 7 or 8 and I am also watching Netflix, because even if I have a whole bunch of work to do, I have to practice taking care of myself, because it is a practice for me. It is not